We're going to attempt to do some science in this video. I'm interested in investigating the Generation 6 Pokéradar Shiny Patch odds, as it has recently come to my attention that the generally agreed upon odds of 1 in 200 per patch at a chain of 40 may not be quite accurate. And because my radar resources make claims about Shiny Patch odds, I felt that it was necessary to test this new hypothesis in order to make sure that the information I present is as accurate as possible. Okay, so Generation 6 Radar Shiny odds. So Pokemon Forever here does admit that all their Pokéradar Shiny rates are just approximations based on incomplete data. The proposed Shiny Patch odds in Generation 6 were based on how they were known to work in Generation 4. So if you click this link, you will see a few different hypotheses using the Gen 4 Radar Shiny odds formula as a basis and hypothesizing how it might work with the new base odds of 1 in 4096 and the existence of the Shiny Charm. So no one here is claiming they know how the actual calculation works. I was always aware that the calculation was unknown, so I would never make claims in any of my resources anywhere about the Shiny Patch odds at chain lengths lower than 40. As for the odds at a chain of 40, I have done some testing myself on this in the past because I wanted to convince myself that my information was accurate. So, resetting where I am right now in the very middle of this square field of purple flowers at Route 5 at a 40 chain, I was getting one Shiny Patch every 45-ish resets on average. Since here the entire spawnable area falls on grass, 5 patches will always shake practically every reset, so you would expect the Shiny Patch odds to be 5 in 200 or 1 in 40 per reset, which seemed to match with my experimental results. And based on this, I was happy to accept that the Shiny Patch odds were indeed 1 in 200 per patch at a chain of 40. However, there was one thing that did always bother me. From doing a lot of radar chaining myself, as well as watching streamers radar hunt, I always noticed it was most common for the Shiny Patch to spawn in the 4 zone. Which doesn't make any sense if the Shiny Patch odds are indeed a flat probability for each patch, as you would think that the 4 zone would be the least likely place for it to spawn, considering that only one 4 zone patch spawns in each set, whereas there can be up to 2 patches in zones 1 through 3. Also, when chaining in smaller fields of grass, the 4 zone always has the worst ratio of grass tiles to grassless tiles. So this never really made a whole lot of sense to me, but I didn't really have any hypothesis or good explanation for that, so I just kind of ignored it. Okay, so there may finally be some data mined evidence of how the Shiny Patch calculation in Generation 6 actually works, which is the reason I am making this video. So this is a tweet by well-known Pokemon RNG researcher www.wwzx. I believe this is the same individual responsible for the 3DS RNG tool. So in this tweet he says, "Finally understand the basic mechanics of XY radar chaining." And he's posted this paste bin of code that he had extracted. And he's written a brief summary here of what he had concluded from interpreting this data. So I'm going to quickly go over each of these points. So the first point here is about the odds of fast music showing up and sticking around. I never really had much of a hypothesis on these odds myself, but what he has concluded here, 2% odds of the music changing after each encounter and a 50% chance of losing fast music every reset, seems reasonable to me. He says there are 3 types of patch. He's calling them good, bad, and empty. I usually refer to them as fast, medium, and slow, but that's fine, no problems there. Okay, so here he's talking about the patch spawn mechanics. So 1 fast or medium shaker spawns in each ring or zone, plus 1 slow patch spawns randomly in either zone 1, zone 2, or zone 3. So 5 patches in total always spawn in each set. That is 100% accurate. I've known this to be the case for a long time. He is saying that the odds that a patch has of spawning as a fast shaker depends on which zone it spawns in. The further away zones have higher odds of containing fast shakers. I'm not too sure about the percentages he has given, but this is definitely the case. The 4-zone patch is always the most likely to spawn as a fast shaker. He also references this capture bonus, where there is a greater probability of spawning fast shakers if you caught the last Pokemon you encountered. I have no opinion of this capture bonus. And here it's mentioned that the shiny odds reset after catching a shiny, which is accurate. Okay, so I don't disagree with anything so far. Here's the interesting part where he starts talking about the shiny patch odds. The shiny rate per good patch is 1 over 8100 minus chain length multiplied by 200. 8100. I'm not quite sure where that number comes from, seeing as the base odds in Generation 6 are 4096, but this formula suggests that the shiny patch odds actually max out at 1 in 100, not 1 in 200. It also seems to suggest that only fast shakers have a chance of being the shiny patch, meaning that patch 4 would be the most likely to be the shiny patch as it has the highest probability of spawning as a fast shaker, and that patch 5 can never spawn as a shiny patch because it can't be a fast shaker. And here he suggests that based on all of this, the max shiny patch odds per reset, assuming all of the patches shake and you get this capture bonus, will be 2.52% at a chain of 40. Okay, so unfortunately there are some things that just aren't very clear from what is written here. Firstly, I'm not sure if this capture bonus that he talks about only applies to the shake cycle directly after the encounter or also applies to every manual reset after that. He hasn't mentioned the effect of the shiny charm anywhere. And if he is indeed claiming that medium shakers cannot be shiny patches, that is demonstrably false. Medium shaker shiny patches most certainly exist, and you will see proof of that later in this video. I hope to get some of these points cleared up at a later date, but for now I'm just going to make some assumptions in order to propose a hypothesis so we can actually do some science. So I'm going to assume that this capture bonus only applies to the shake cycle directly after the encounter, which would make it pretty useless and irrelevant, and therefore it can just be ignored. I'm going to assume that the shiny charm has no effect on shiny patch odds, and I'm going to kind of ignore the distinction between fast and medium shaker shiny patches for now, and just use these numbers 23%, 43%, 63%, and 83% as the multipliers for a patch being shiny for each zone. Okay, so here's our hypothesis. Each of the 5 patches has its own individual probability of being shiny depending on our chain length. At a chain length of 40, this calculates to 1%, and therefore the odds of patch 1, patch 2, patch 3, patch 4, and patch 5 being a shiny patch is 0.23%, 0.43%, 0.63%, 0.83%, and 0% respectively. The max shiny odds at a chain of 40 will therefore be 2.12%, or approximately 1 in 47 per reset, if patches 1 through 4 all generate on grass. I wanted to get a sample size of 100 shiny patches spawned in order to adequately test this hypothesis. I did all of the resets at a chain of 40 in the middle of this field of purple flowers at Route 5, as here the entire spawnable area falls on grass, which ensures we actually see every shiny patch that is generated. I kept track of how many resets I was doing, which zone each shiny patch spawned in, and also whether the shiny patch spawned as a fast or a medium shaker. In case anyone was wondering, this is not an emulator. I am playing on actual 3DS hardware with a retail cartridge of Pokemon Y, and I do have the shiny charm. Alright, enjoy the shiny patch montage. Okay, we have some results. It took 5,363 resets to spawn 100 shiny patches, and just doing some very basic statistical analysis, this equals 1 shiny patch every 54 or so resets on average. So shiny patches weren't quite as abundant as I would have expected based on our theoretical odds of 1 in 47, but it's not too far off. Of the 100 shiny patches, 86 of them were fast shakers and only 14 were medium shakers. So as you would have clearly seen, medium shaker shiny patches do in fact exist. They just appear to be much less likely. The real interesting part is when we start to look at the shiny patch abundance for each zone. As I expected, the 4 zone has the highest abundance of shiny patches, followed by the 3 zone, then the 2 zone, with the least number of shiny patches spawning in the 1 zone. There is a very clear trend here. If we compare our experimental results with our hypothetical odds, they actually match reasonably well. So the shiny patch abundance for the 1 zone was about 0.17%, theoretical's 0.23%. The 2 zones shiny patches were about 0.35%, theoretical's 0.43%. 3 zone shiny patches are about 0.52%, theoretical's 0.63%. And the abundance of 4 zone shiny patches was about 0.82%, the theoretical was 0.83%. So our hypothesis does appear to be consistent with the observations. What I can say for sure though, is that the previous hypothesis that the shiny patch odds are a flat probability for each patch has been falsified. It doesn't explain all of the observations. It doesn't explain the skewing of the shiny patch abundance to the further away zones. So what I'm going to do now is edit my calculator here. I'm going to make a copy of this sheet. So this was my previous shiny patch formula. This has now been disproven. Here is our new formula. Okay, I want to be clear that I'm not claiming that this formula is definitely correct. I'm actually pretty sure that it isn't quite accurate yet, and at some points will need to be cleared up with the help of RNG researchers. But I believe that at the very least, it is a better representation of how the RNG actually works than the previous formula I was using, and will therefore still be useful. Okay, so what is this new information going to mean when you are actually resetting for a shiny patch? Well, by the looks of things, the shiny patch odds are generally going to be a bit lower than what my previous formula seemed to suggest. The odds of 1 in 47 when resetting in the middle here is a bit worse than what my previous formula suggested. If we try resetting somewhere else, so for example like right in the corner here, which is the least optimal place you could reset for a shiny patch, as you are now minimizing the amount of grass in the spawnable area. So if we try calculating that, so this is 7, 9, 11. So the odds with our new formula is about 1 in 106 per reset. I'm gonna write old here. It's about 1 in 72 per reset. So the new formula suggests our shiny patch odds here are considerably worse than what the old formula suggested. So with this new information, it seems that resetting optimally for your shiny patch is even more important than what I previously thought. I must emphasize, if you are at a 40 chain or you have fast music and actually want decent odds to spawn a shiny patch, make sure you are resetting close to the middle, not near the edges. So as far as reset tile strategies when resetting for shiny patches is concerned, I don't think this new information really changes much. It's still always going to be optimal to maximize the amount of grass in the spawnable area by resetting close to the middle of your field of grass. But if we use Route 2 as an example here, my old formula suggested that resetting right in the very middle is the most optimal. which makes sense since there you'll be spawning the greatest number of patches per reset on average. Resetting slightly off from the middle, so here, would be slightly less optimal, but still decent since the entire field of grass is still in the spawnable area. With the new formula, however, the shiny patch odds at these two tiles are nearly identical. It seems that the fact that more patches spawn per reset on average here is offset by the fact that there are extra 4-zone grass tiles here that have a higher probability of being shiny, and I guess these two factors kind of cancel each other out, resulting in the odds to be pretty much the same. So with this new information, it seems less important that you reset right in the middle. As long as you reset such that you have the maximum number of grass tiles in the spawnable area, you should have close to the maximum odds. And again, resetting right in the corner like this is obviously going to be suboptimal. And just looking at a very small field of grass as an example, so this is Route 3. The shiny patch odds here are pretty bad with the new formula. This may explain a lot, as I've personally had some very long shiny patch resets in small fields of grass such as Route 3 and Route 11. Again, the old formula suggests resetting right in the middle here is most optimal, whereas resetting slightly off from the middle is less and less optimal for shiny patch. But just as with the Route 2 example, the new formula calculates the odds of these three reset tiles to be about the same. And here there are less grass tiles in the spawnable area, so the shiny patch odds will be worse. In addition to being able to calculate shiny patch odds at a chain of 40 more accurately, we should also now be able to calculate shiny patch odds at chain lengths lower than 40, which is something I had never been claiming could be done. So if we run these calculations again, but instead at a chain of, say, 36 now, this multiplier is now 0.11, and the odds of spawning a shiny patch is now approximately 0.23%, or 1 in 430, if we reset where I'm standing right now. And if I change the chain length here to 36, as you can see, yeah, 1 in 425. Slight differences due to differences in rounding. And with our old formula here, calculates to be at about 1 in 120 per reset at a 36 chain. And I'm using the shiny odds calculation on Pokemon Forever in the old formula, which says the shiny patch odds at a 36 chain are about 1 in 600, and 5 in 600 is around 1 in 120. So I was interested in doing some testing at a 36 chain. Unfortunately, getting data points for shiny patches at chain lengths lower than 40 is obviously going to be much more difficult, but I did want to try and get a few at least. Okay, 5 data points was about the best I could do, as I was getting pretty tired of doing resets. So, unfortunately, we won't be able to conclude too much from this, but the main point was just to get a rough idea. It took 2,529 resets to spawn 5 shiny patches, so around 1 shiny patch every 500-ish resets on average. Based on this, it does seem much more reasonable that the odds are 1 in 425 rather than 1 in 120. The third shiny patch took 750 resets to spawn, and the fourth one took over 1,000 resets to show up. If the odds were as good as 1 in 120, it doesn't seem likely to go that far odds twice in a row like that. And if we just have a little bit of a play around with the chain length here. So, at a 30 chain, it's about 1 in 1,000. Old formula says about 1 in 240. At a 20 chain, about 1 in 1900. Old formula says about 1 in 440. 10 chain, about 1 in 2900. Old formula says about 1 in 640. Yeah, so the new formula seems to suggest that the shiny patch odds at lower chain lengths are pretty bad. Which makes sense, since early shiny patches are generally pretty rare in my experience. So overall, the numbers at lower chain lengths with the new formula do seem much more reasonable in my opinion. I can't really comment too much on this without any more experimental data though. Okay, that's about all I have for this video. What I will do is update all of my 40 chain shiny patch calculations for each route in the document using the new formula. So go here for easy access to more accurate shiny patch odds. The link to the document will be in the description of this video if you don't already have it. I will also make sure to update this calculator. If you want to use this calculator for anything, like maybe you might be interested in running some calculations for shiny patch odds at lower chain lengths, the link to this calculator can be found down here. And I'll make sure to keep everything updated if there is any new information found. Thanks for watching.